Deep within ancient rock, a collection of perfectly round spheres holds a secret. These are the Klerksdorp Spheres from South Africa, and they present us with one of archaeology's most stubborn mysteries. Were these objects shaped by the slow, blind hand of geology, or do they represent something far more profound, the work of a civilization lost to unimaginable time? By the end of this journey, you will have the evidence to decide for yourself if our planet's history is far stranger than we've been told. We will investigate their impossible age and the precise grooves that defy simple explanation. Does our world contain echoes of intelligence from a time before multicellular life even existed? These objects are almost deceptively simple in appearance. Typically ranging from just 1 to 4 inches across, they fit comfortably in the palm of your hand. Some are near perfect spheres, while others take the form of flattened discs. But it is their material that offers the first clue to their strangeness. Each sphere is carved from a single piece of pyrophyllite, a mineral noted for its exceptional hardness, rivaling that of steel. Their surfaces are often marked with 3 parallel grooves running perfectly around their equators, lines so straight and precise they seem machined. The true weight of their mystery, however, is measured not in their size but in the rock from which they were pulled. Miners discovered these spheres deep within deposits of Precambrian rock, a layer geologists confidently date to an almost incomprehensible 2.8 billion years old. To grasp that scale, consider that this was a world before plants, before dinosaurs, before even the most basic multicellular life. The land was barren, the air largely unbreathable, and the only living things were simple, single-celled microbes in the sea. In that primordial era, according to everything we understand, there was nothing on the planet capable of purpose, of craft, or of carving a perfect sphere from solid stone. The silence of that 2.8 billion-year-old rock was first broken in the 1980s, not by scientists, but by the powerful grind of mining machinery. Deep within the pyrophyllite mines near the small town of Oudtshoorn, South Africa, workers were engaged in the difficult task of extracting the soft, grayish mineral, often used for making ceramics and other industrial products. Their world was one of dust, noise, and the raw power of excavation, so you can imagine their sheer disbelief when, instead of a random chunk of mineral, they would occasionally split open a seam of solid rock to find a perfectly round sphere nestled inside. These objects did not look like they belonged. They were not random nodules or natural formations. They were impossibly round, impossibly smooth, and they came from a place where nothing man-made should have been able to exist. The miners were the first witnesses to this profound anomaly, holding in their hands objects that seemed to defy the very history written in the stone around them. The mystery quickly traveled beyond the mine shafts, reaching the desk of geologist Bruce Cairncross, a scientist dedicated to understanding the Earth's composition. Cairncross was the first to formally document and study these peculiar finds. He confirmed their incredible age and noted the baffling precision of the equatorial grooves. It was his scientific authority that transformed a miner's tall tale into a genuine archaeological and geological puzzle. In doing so, he inadvertently lit the fuse on a debate that would rage for decades, a conflict between established science and possibilities that venture into the truly unknown. Were these spheres merely a geological fluke, or were they the first physical evidence of a story we have not yet learned how to read? So how does mainstream geology explain an object that looks so perfectly made? The primary answer lies in a natural process called concretion. Imagine a cavity forming within soft, ancient sediment, perhaps from a bubble of gas or the decay of an organic speck. Over immense stretches of time, mineral-rich water percolates through the rock. These dissolved minerals, acting as a natural cement, slowly and uniformly precipitate out of the water, crystallizing inward from the walls of the cavity. This process can form a solid, often spherical, nodule trapped inside the surrounding rock. In the case of the Klerksdorp Spheres, that cement was pyrophyllite. Later, the entire formation was subjected to tremendous heat and pressure, a metamorphic event that hardened the once soft concretion into the tough, steel-like object miners discovered billions of years later. But what about those uncannily precise grooves encircling the equator? Geologists point to the very structure of the rock itself. As the concretion formed, internal crystalline structures grew, creating planes of weakness. When the surrounding rock underwent metamorphic stress, these spheres often fractured along these pre-existing internal lines. The parallel ridges and grooves are not cut into the sphere, but are the raised edges of these natural seam lines, the result of the crystal's own geometry and the immense forces of the Earth. It is a compelling argument from uniformity, suggesting that what appears to be design is merely the elegant and blind hand of natural law. Yet this geological explanation, for all its elegance, begins to fray at the edges when confronted with the objects themselves. The theory of concretion struggles to account for the sheer perfection of form found in many of these spheres. Natural processes tend to create variations, imperfections, a certain organic randomness. But numerous Klerksdorp spheres exhibit a roundness and symmetry that seems to defy the chaotic nature of mineral crystallization. It is one thing for a process to create a lumpy, roughly spherical nodule. It is another entirely for it to produce an object so balanced and uniform that it rolls smoothly and evenly in your hand. This precise equilibrium suggests a level of intentional shaping that natural geology is hard-pressed to replicate. Then there is the enigma of the grooves. While geologists attribute them to crystalline planes of weakness, their appearance tells a different story. On several spheres, these are not jagged, irregular fracture lines. They are three distinct, parallel furrows that run with unnerving precision around the entire circumference, as if lathed by a machine. The grooves are often evenly spaced and maintain a consistent depth and width along their entire length. This kind of symmetrical, triplicate patterning is not a common signature of random metamorphic stress. It looks, for all the world, like a deliberate design feature. The material itself presents another layer of mystery. These spheres are carved from pyrophyllite, a mineral known for its extreme hardness. To inscribe such clean, parallel lines into this steel-like substance would require a tool harder still, and a significant amount of controlled force. The idea that the immense, chaotic pressure of geological metamorphosis could accidentally produce such fine, deliberate-looking marks on an object of near-perfect shape feels, to many observers, like an incredible coincidence. It is the combination of all these factors that fuels the alternative theories. The perfect shape, the machined-like grooves, the hard material, and the impossible age together form a puzzle that some believe points away from blind nature and towards something else entirely. If this was not the work of geology, then whose hand was steady enough to craft these objects in a world without hands? This is where the story of the Klerksdorp Spheres collides with one of the most controversial ideas in alternative history, an idea championed by researcher Michael Cremo. In his massive work, Forbidden Archaeology, The Hidden History of the Human Race, Cremo presents a radical thesis. He argues that tools, artifacts, and even human remains have been found in geological strata dating back millions, even billions of years, far older than conventional science allows for modern humans. According to Cremo, this evidence does not fit the established timeline of human evolution, and has therefore been systematically dismissed, ignored, or even hidden away in museum basements to protect the mainstream narrative. For Cremo, the Klerksdorp Spheres are not geological oddities. They are perfect examples of this suppressed evidence, artifacts that prove an advanced intelligence was present on Earth in the deep, deep past. His book meticulously catalogs countless such finds, building a case that what we think we know about our own history is a carefully curated fragment of the truth. It was this powerful, provocative argument that launched the spheres from a local mining mystery into an international sensation within alternative circles. Suddenly, they were not just curiosities. They were potential proof of a forgotten chapter in Earth's history, evidence of a civilization so ancient its very existence rewrites everything. Cremo's work gave a voice to a profound and unsettling question. If we accept that these spheres are man-made, what does that say about the story we tell ourselves about who we are, and how long we have been here? The implications are staggering, suggesting that our species, or perhaps another intelligent species altogether, walked the Earth at a time when only microbes were supposed to exist. This idea transforms the spheres from simple objects into profound symbols, representing a history we are only just beginning to uncover. These mysterious spheres from South Africa have a name for their peculiar condition. They are what researchers call an out-of-place artifact, or an OOP art. This label is reserved for those rare, baffling objects that seem to defy all logical context. An OOP art is an item, whether a tool, a sculpture, or a mechanism, that is found in a geological stratum or an archaeological site where it simply should not be. Its level of technology, its style of craftsmanship, or its very material composition appears impossibly advanced for the time period from which it supposedly originates. It is an anomaly that stands in stark opposition to the established historical timeline, a single piece of a puzzle that does not fit the picture we have so carefully assembled. The Klerksdorp Spheres, locked within rock nearly 3 billion years old, are a textbook example. If they are artificial, they are the ultimate OOP art, suggesting a presence of technology on a planet that was, by all scientific accounts, a microbial world. But they are not alone in this strange category. Consider the Antikythera mechanism, a complex clockwork device of bronze gears recovered from an ancient Greek shipwreck. Its intricate differential gearing was so sophisticated that nothing like it would appear again for over 1,000 years. Or take the Baghdad battery, a simple clay jar containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod, which some theorists propose could have been used for electroplating metals, a technology not thought to exist for another 2 millennia. Each of these objects, in its own way, whispers a question that challenges our textbooks. They ask us if our understanding of history is complete, or if we are merely looking at a simplified version, a story that has conveniently left out the most perplexing chapters. The existence of OOP arts does not merely suggest that a few dates in our timeline might be slightly off. It proposes the possibility of profound gaps, of rises and falls of knowledge and capability that we have not yet begun to fathom. When you place the Klerksdorp Spheres next to these other enigmas, a pattern begins to emerge, not of a single linear progression from primitive to advanced, but of a history that might be cyclical, or perhaps even stranger. What if technological achievement is not a one-time climb, but a flame that can be lit, extinguished, and lit again, leaving behind only the most durable of relics, like these impossibly hard spheres, to hint at what was lost? This apparent contradiction lies at the very heart of the material mystery. Pyrophyllite, in its natural state, is not an exceptionally hard mineral. On the Mohs scale of hardness, where talc is a 1 and diamond is a 10, pyrophyllite typically registers between 1 and 2. You could scratch it with your fingernail, yet the reputation of the Klerksdorp Spheres is built upon their legendary toughness, with miners and researchers alike reporting that they are incredibly difficult to mark, even with a steel blade. So how can the same substance be both soft and hard as steel? The answer may not lie in the mineral's original state, but in the incredible transformative forces it endured. The geological explanation points to metamorphism. When the original, soft pyrophyllite sediment was buried deep underground, it was subjected to unimaginable heat and colossal pressure over billions of years. This process, akin to nature's own forging, can radically alter the crystalline structure of a rock. It recrystallizes the minerals, driving out impurities and bonding the atoms into a much denser, tougher, and more resilient form. The soft mineral paste was essentially baked and compressed into a completely different material, one that retained the chemical identity of pyrophyllite, but gained the physical properties of a far harder stone. This is a well-understood geological process, yet, for some, the extraordinary hardness of the spheres hints at something beyond even this natural forging. Could there have been an additional, unknown process at work? Alternative theorists propose that if these were indeed artifacts, their creators might have possessed a technology or a method to artificially harden the material, a lost technique that could fuse the mineral at a molecular level, creating a ceramic-like durability far beyond what simple geology can achieve. This idea pushes the mystery into even stranger territory, suggesting that the spheres are not just shaped objects, but were materially engineered. The very substance they are made from becomes a clue, a testament to a process we do not fully comprehend, whether it was the slow, immense power of the Earth itself, or the focused, intelligent application of a force we can scarcely imagine. One of the most compelling stories surrounding these objects claims the ultimate scientific authority confirmed their impossibility. According to a widespread and persistent myth, NASA itself analyzed the Klerksdorp Spheres and reached a stunning conclusion. The story goes that agency scientists found the spheres to be so perfectly balanced, with their centers of gravity so precisely aligned, that they could not possibly have been formed under the influence of Earth's gravity. The only conceivable place such an object could be manufactured, the legend states, was in the zero-gravity environment of outer space. This is a powerful and seductive narrative. It takes a local geological mystery and elevates it to a cosmic level, suggesting not just an ancient civilization, but one with access to spaceflight. The problem, however, is that this story is a complete fabrication. There exists no official NASA report, no scientific paper, no public statement, nor any credible documentation from the agency that has ever mentioned the Klerksdorp Spheres. The claim appears to be a classic piece of modern folklore, an urban legend that attached itself to the objects to amplify their mystery. So how did this myth begin, and why has it proven so durable? These kinds of stories often emerge from the fertile ground of the ancient astronaut and alternative history communities. A compelling, though unverified, anecdote is shared in a book or a documentary. It resonates because it provides a simple, authoritative-sounding answer to a deeply complex question. That anecdote is then repeated, shared, and amplified across magazines, television shows, and later, the internet, each retelling stripping away the original source's uncertainty until the claim is presented as established fact. The NASA story gives the spheres a stamp of approval from one of the most respected scientific institutions in the world, making the mystery feel officially validated. It transforms them from curious rocks into certified anomalies. This process reveals less about the spheres themselves and more about our deep desire for definitive answers. When faced with a genuine enigma, the allure of a clear, dramatic explanation from a powerful source can be overwhelming, even when that source is entirely fictional. The endurance of this myth forces us to confront a difficult truth. Separating the real mystery of the Klerksdorp Spheres from the layers of fiction that surround them is the first step toward understanding what they truly are. The journey of the Klerksdorp Spheres from a mining curiosity to an internet legend is a story in itself, one largely written by the engines of pseudoscience and sensational media. Television shows dedicated to ancient astronaut theories have seized upon these objects, presenting them not as a complex geological puzzle, but as definitive proof of extraterrestrial visitation. In these narratives, the spheres are often described with dramatic certainty as out-of-place artifacts, their grooves labeled as tool marks and their perfect shape hailed as an impossible feat for any natural process. This framing is compelling and straightforward, offering a clean, exciting answer. It taps into a deep-seated human desire for mystery and the thrill of believing that our history is far more spectacular than we've been told. The appeal is undeniable. A story about ancient aliens is instantly more gripping than a slow, patient explanation about mineral concretion and metamorphic crystallization. It transforms a dense scientific discussion into a cosmic detective story, where every groove is a clue left by star-faring visitors. This sensational approach, however, comes at a significant cost. To build its captivating narrative, it must consistently ignore or actively dismiss the more nuanced, evidence-based geological explanations. The complex processes that form concretions under heat and pressure are simplified away as impossible or inadequate. The established age of the rock is used not as a point of scientific fact to be understood, but as a bludgeon to prove conventional science wrong. This creates a false dichotomy. forcing a choice between a dazzling extraterrestrial explanation and a supposedly closed-minded scientific community unwilling to accept the truth. Online forums amplify this effect, creating echo chambers where the NASA, myth, and other fabrications are repeated as fact, and anyone questioning the alien hypothesis is framed as part of a cover-up. The real victim in this process is the genuine mystery. The Klerksdorp Spheres are fascinating precisely because they sit in a gray area, at the boundary of what we can easily explain. They challenge geologists to refine their models and understanding of rock formation. By painting them with the broad, sensational brush of ancient aliens, pseudoscience ironically robs them of their true intrigue. It replaces a deep, complex question about the strange and beautiful workings of our planet with a simple, pre-packaged fantasy. The spheres become props in a storyline, their actual physical properties and geological context rendered almost irrelevant. So we are left with a choice. Do we embrace the easy answer, the one that offers cinematic wonder but requires us to set aside established knowledge? Or do we sit with the discomfort of not knowing for sure, appreciating the object for the legitimate scientific puzzle it presents? This is the true legacy of the spheres in popular culture, a testament not to ancient engineers, but to our own powerful need for stories that make sense of a confusing world. These three parallel grooves are the heart of the artifact's mystery. Under magnification, their precision becomes even more startling. They run around the sphere's equator with a uniformity that feels deliberate, each groove maintaining a consistent depth and width, perfectly parallel to its neighbors. The spacing between them is so even that it evokes the work of a lathe or a milling machine. For those who see intelligent design, this triplicate pattern is the strongest evidence. Nature is brilliant, but it rarely produces such consistent, repeated symmetry. This is not the look of a random crack or a chaotic fracture. It looks like a specification, a purposeful marking inscribed onto a manufactured object. The grooves seem to serve a function we can no longer decipher, perhaps to hold the sphere in a housing, to align it with another component, or simply to signify its purpose. They are the clearest argument that these objects are not random formations, but the products of a guiding intelligence. Geology, however, offers a different lens through which to view these very same lines. Experts point to a common phenomenon in hard, brittle materials known as conchoidal fracture. This is the same type of break you see in glass or obsidian, a smooth, curved fracture that often leaves behind concentric ridges. In the case of the spheres, geologists propose that these famous grooves are not grooves at all in the sense of being cut into the surface. Instead, they are the raised edges of incipient fractures. As the metamorphic rock underwent immense stress, these spheres, locked within their matrix, began to crack along pre-existing planes of weakness defined by their internal crystalline structure. The parallel lines are the beginnings of these fractures, the points where the rock started to split but was held together by the surrounding material. The uniformity of the spacing could be explained by the regular crystalline lattice of the mineral itself, a natural geometry dictating where the stress would manifest. Another compelling geological explanation involves the concept of a softer core. Some concretions form around a central object, like a grain of sand or a fossil. Imagine a sphere that formed with a core of a slightly different, softer mineral. Over billions of years, that softer inner material could slowly weather and erode away, even while the harder outer shell of pyrophyllite remained. The grooves in this scenario are not something that was added, but something that was left behind. They would be the residual ridges of the hard shell, marking the places where the softer interior material once was, now vanished. This process can create remarkably straight and parallel lines, a ghostly impression of what the object once contained. This is a phenomenon observed in other, less controversial concretions around the world, where differential erosion reveals the internal history of the rock. So the choice presented by these enigmatic grooves is a stark one. Do you see the unmistakable signature of a tool, a mark of design so precise it whispers of a lost technology? Or do you see the elegant, if brutal, handwriting of the earth itself, a story of internal crystals, immense pressure, and the slow, patient work of erosion. The answer you find may depend on which story you are primed to hear. The haunting symmetry of these South African spheres is not a solitary phenomenon. Across the globe, the Earth is dotted with other spherical mysteries, each with its own story, yet bound by a common, puzzling shape. In the dense jungles of Costa Rica, for instance, lie the famous stone spheres of the Dikwes people. These are monumental artifacts, some weighing over 15 tons, carved with incredible precision from solid granite. They are the work of a pre-Columbian civilization, dating back perhaps 1,000 years, and their purpose remains debated. Were they astronomical markers, symbols of power, or territorial boundaries? Unlike the Klerksdorp Spheres, their origin is human, their scale is massive, and their material is volcanic. Yet they share that same unnerving perfection of form, a roundness that seems to defy the simple tools of their era. Then, on the windswept coast of New Zealand's South Island, we find the Moeraki boulders. These enormous spheres, some over 6 feet across, lie scattered along Cocoa Beach as if discarded by a giant. They are concretions, formed from ancient seafloor sediments around a central core, and their age is a mere 60 million years. Geologists understand their formation perfectly. They are the result of a natural cementation process, much like the one proposed for the Klerksdorp Spheres, just on a vastly different scale and in a different type of rock. They are beautiful, but they are not mysterious in the same way. They fit comfortably within our understanding of geology. This global gallery of spheres presents a fascinating spectrum. On one end, we have the Moeraki boulders, a solved puzzle of natural processes. On the other, we have the Costa Rican spheres, a human-made marvel whose specific cultural meaning is lost to time. And then, suspended right in the middle, we have the Klerksdorp Spheres. They possess the human-scale precision of the Costa Rican spheres, but they are locked within rock that is billions of years older. They share a proposed geological origin with the Moeraki boulders, yet their small size, hard material, and precise grooves make them look far more manufactured. This juxtaposition forces a critical question. Why does the human mind, and perhaps nature itself, return again and again to this perfect shape? Is it because the sphere is a fundamental form of structural strength and efficiency, a shape that appears naturally under uniform pressure or centrifugal force? Or is there a deeper, more symbolic reason, a universal attraction to the wholeness and balance that a sphere represents? When we see this pattern repeat across continents and across eons, from the hand-sized enigmas of South Africa to the monumental mysteries of Central America, it suggests that the sphere itself holds a power that transcends any single explanation. It is a form that speaks to both the blind forces of geology and the highest aspirations of intelligence, leaving us to wonder where one ends and the other begins. This perfect, closed form has captivated the human spirit for millennia. Across countless ancient cultures, the sphere was never just a shape. It was a profound symbol, a container of cosmic truth. For the philosophers of ancient Greece, the sphere represented the ultimate ideal of perfection and divinity. They saw the cosmos itself as a series of rotating crystalline spheres, carrying the planets and stars in their perfect, eternal motions. The Earth, they believed, was a sphere at the center of this divine geometry, the most perfect and self-contained form possible. This was not merely an astronomical model. It was a spiritual one, reflecting a universe governed by harmony, balance, and mathematical order. The sphere symbolized the divine intellect, a mind so complete and unified that it had no beginning and no end. This idea echoes in the sacred art of Buddhism, where the mandala, often circular or spherical in its overall conception, serves as a map of the cosmos and a tool for meditation, guiding the practitioner toward enlightenment and unity with the whole of existence. Even the simple circle, the two-dimensional shadow of a sphere, holds immense power. It represents the cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth, the endless turning of the seasons, and the eternal return. So what happens when we apply this deep, symbolic lens to the mystery of the Klerksdorp Spheres. If they are not geological accidents but deliberate creations, their form is the first and most important message. A hypothetical advanced civilization, existing in the deep mists of time, would have been just as drawn to this universal symbol as we are. For them, crafting a perfect sphere from the enduring stone of the earth could have been an act of profound meaning. It might have been a physical representation of their understanding of the universe. A single sphere could symbolize their home planet, a self-contained world. It could represent the unity of their consciousness, or their aspiration toward a state of perfect knowledge and balance. The three parallel grooves add another layer of potential symbolism. In many esoteric traditions, the number 3 is sacred. It is the number of creation, representing a fundamental trinity found across spiritual systems. Think of mind, body, spirit, or past, present, future, or the triple goddess of maiden, mother, and crone. Those 3 grooves encircling the equator could have denoted a fundamental cosmic law, a trinity of principles that govern their reality. They might have been alignment marks for a device, but they could just as easily have been sacred inscriptions, a permanent geometric prayer etched into a symbol of the cosmos. Perhaps these objects were not tools in a practical sense, but were created as vessels for spiritual energy, or as focal points for meditation, designed to remind their creators of the perfection inherent in the universe. In this light, the spheres transform from potential artifacts into potential relics. They become not evidence of a technology, but of a theology, a philosophy carved in stone. They would be a testament to a civilization that had not only advanced materially, but had also contemplated the great mysteries of existence, choosing the most universal and perfect form to express their understanding. Their legacy would not be a machine, but a symbol, a whisper across billions of years suggesting that the search for unity and meaning is perhaps as ancient as life itself. The mind rebels at the thought of a workshop on a primordial Earth. 2.8 billion years ago, our planet was a stark and violent place, its landscapes sculpted by volcanic fury under a faint young sun. The only life was microscopic, simple cells adrift in a vast ocean, utterly incapable of holding a tool, let alone designing one. Against this backdrop, the very idea of a craftsman shaping the Klerksdorp Spheres feels like a logical impossibility. Yet if we suspend our disbelief for a moment and entertain the notion that they are artifacts, we are forced to ask a staggering question. What kind of technology could have existed in that alien world, so far removed from anything we recognize? Perhaps their methods were not merely primitive versions of our own, but something entirely different, a lost science that worked in harmony with the Earth's own processes. One compelling possibility is that they mastered a form of guided mineral growth. Instead of carving the spheres from solid rock with brute force, they might have learned to coax the pyrophyllite into forming these perfect shapes. We see a pale shadow of this today in the way crystals can be grown in laboratories under controlled conditions. An advanced culture could have developed a deep understanding of geochemistry, using precise sonic frequencies, subtle energy fields, or organic catalysts to encourage the mineral to crystallize around a central seed, layer by layer, into a flawless sphere. The 3 grooves could have been inscribed not by a cutting tool, but by introducing a resonant pattern that subtly altered the crystallization along those specific lines, much like a fingerprint left on growing ice. This would be a technology not of extraction, but of cultivation, a gentle art of persuading stone to grow into desired forms. Another theory ventures into even more esoteric territory, suggesting the use of focused sound or vibration. We know that high-frequency, acoustic waves can shape and manipulate materials in modern industrial processes. Could an ancient civilization have discovered this principle, using precisely tuned lithophones or resonant chambers to make the solid rock flow like liquid clay, molding it into perfect spheres without ever touching it? The grooves would be a natural result of standing wave patterns within this acoustic field. This idea transforms the artifact from a product of physical labor into one of refined knowledge, a testament to a culture that understood the hidden music of matter itself. Contrast this with the stark reality of what was actually present on Earth at that time. The gap is not just wide, it is a chasm. The first multicellular life would not appear for another 2 billion years. The first stone tools made by our own hominid ancestors are a mere 3 million years old. To place a sophisticated manufacturing process into that barren, microbial era is to suggest a presence that is not just ancient, but fundamentally other. It implies a chapter of Earth's history for which we have no fossil record, no geological context, and no logical precedent. Were these the works of a native terrestrial civilization that rose and fell in a span of time so vast its traces were utterly erased by tectonic shifts and the slow grind of erosion? Or does their existence point to something even more profound, a visitation by intelligences from beyond our world, who left behind these enigmatic objects as markers, messages, or simply discarded tools from a project we cannot fathom? The spheres force us to confront the limits of our own imagination, challenging us to consider that the story of intelligence on this planet may be far stranger and far older than we have ever dared to dream. The number 2.8 billion years is so vast it can feel meaningless, a number on a page with no connection to our reality. To truly grasp the scale, we must build a timeline, one that stretches from the moment these spheres were sealed in stone to the world we know today. Imagine compressing the entire history of the Earth into a single calendar year, starting on January 1st. In this timescale, the Precambrian rock that cradles the Klerksdorp Spheres forms sometime in late March. Life remains simple, microscopic specks in the ocean for months on end. The first complex, multicellular animals do not appear until mid-November. The age of the dinosaurs begins in the second week of December and is over by the 26th. All of recorded human history, from the first cities to the present day, occupies the final minute of the final hour of December 31st. In this immense stretch of time, the spheres are sealed away for over 2.6 billion years before the first dinosaur ever takes a breath. They wait another 70 million years after the last dinosaur falls before the very first hominid, a creature more ape than human, walks upright. This is the heart of the timeline problem, the core of the mystery that makes these objects so profoundly challenging. If they are artifacts, their makers were active in the geological equivalent of March, and we, in our entire civilization, are a fleeting event on the last tick of the clock on New Year's Eve. What kind of intelligence could have existed in that distant March, in a world of volcanoes and poisonous gases, a world without flowers, without insects, without any animal life at all? The very ground we walk on, the mountains we climb, the continents themselves have been recycled by plate tectonics multiple times over since then. The idea that a civilization could have risen, developed the capacity to shape stone with precision, and then vanished without leaving any other trace except for a few small, hard spheres is a proposition that stretches our understanding of history, biology, and geology to the absolute breaking point. It forces a single haunting question: is the silence of the fossil record, the apparent emptiness of that ancient world, a statement of fact, or merely a reflection of how completely time can erase a story? The miners who first pulled these spheres from the earth were not scientists or archaeologists. They were practical men, their hands calloused from hard labor, their world defined by the tangible realities of rock and machinery. Their testimonies, passed down through the years, carry the raw weight of first-hand experience. Many reported that when they split open a fresh seam of pyrophyllite, the sphere inside would appear unnervingly clean, as if it had been polished. It stood out starkly against the rough, fractured rock that had encased it for eons, looking less like a natural formation and more like a finished product that had just rolled off a production line. This immediate impression of something manufactured, something that did not belong, is a common thread in their stories. They were not looking for mysteries. They were looking for mineral. What they found instead challenged their understanding of the very ground they were digging in. One of the most persistent claims from these eyewitnesses involves the sphere's almost supernatural hardness. Several miners swore that when they tried to scratch the surface with a hardened steel pick or a knife, the metal tool would simply skate across it, failing to leave even the faintest mark. This is a startling assertion, given that pyrophyllite is not supposed to be that hard. For a man who works with stone every day, the resistance of the material was not a theoretical question. It was a physical sensation, a jarring feedback that felt wrong. This perceived indestructibility fueled the belief that they were handling something extraordinary, an object whose material properties defied simple geological explanation. Of course, the reliability of these accounts must be considered with care. They are oral histories, recollections shared in locker rooms and local pubs, often years after the fact. Human memory is fallible, and a story can become more dramatic with each retelling. The shock of the initial discovery could easily have colored their perception, magnifying the strangeness of what they held. Furthermore, not all miners reported the same experience. Some spheres were indeed scratched or damaged during extraction. This variability is crucial. It suggests that not every sphere was identical. Perhaps only a subset underwent the specific metamorphic conditions that resulted in that extreme hardness. Or maybe the legends have coalesced around the most perfect and baffling examples, leaving the more ordinary ones forgotten. These first-hand accounts, for all their potential inconsistencies, form the human foundation of the entire mystery. They are the emotional core, the moment when an abstract geological oddity became a physical object that confused and amazed the people who held it. They remind us that at the beginning of this grand debate about ancient civilizations and cosmic visitors, there was simply a group of miners, standing in the dust and din of a deep underground shaft, holding a perfectly round stone that should not have been there. So where does the hard evidence from a laboratory stand? The scientific scrutiny of the Klerksdorp Spheres is a story defined more by its absence than its presence. Despite their fame in alternative circles, these objects have never been the sole subject of a dedicated, in-depth study published in a major, peer-reviewed geological journal. The scientific community has largely addressed them as a peripheral curiosity, a phenomenon already explained by established geological principles, and thus not worthy of the significant time and funding required for a full-scale forensic analysis. The primary scientific observations we do have come from the initial investigations by geologists like Bruce Cairncross and from general knowledge of how rocks form. When examined, the internal structure of the spheres is consistently described as cryptocrystalline. This means the mineral grains are so incredibly fine and densely interlocked that they form a uniform, almost glassy mass, with no visible crystals to the naked eye. This is exactly what one would expect from a concretion that has undergone intense metamorphism. The heat and pressure have recrystallized the original material into this dense, hard, and homogeneous state. There is no internal machinery, no hidden core of a different material, no wiring or artificial inclusions. From a structural perspective, they appear to be exactly what geologists claim, solid nodules of metamorphosed pyrophyllite. The composition is similarly straightforward. Spectrographic and other standard mineralogical tests confirm that the spheres are composed almost entirely of pyrophyllite, with common trace elements like iron and silicon. There is no exotic or unknown alloy, no material that would signal an artificial origin. They are chemically a piece of the surrounding rock from which they were pried. This compositional identity is a powerful argument for a natural origin, as it firmly plants their formation process within the same geological event that created the host stone. The most intense focus, of course, is on the grooves. Under microscopic examination, the nature of these lines becomes clearer. They do not typically show the sharp, clean edges of a tool cut. Instead, their profiles often appear more like miniature ridges and troughs, consistent with the edges of crystalline plates or the results of differential erosion. In some specimens, the grooves can be seen aligning with the internal crystalline structure of the mineral, following the natural planes of weakness along which the rock would preferentially fracture under stress. This is a critical piece of evidence for the geological camp. It suggests the grooves are not inscribed onto the surface, but are an expression of the sphere's internal architecture, a feature born from within during its formation and subsequent metamorphic history. The lack of a definitive scientific paper, however, leaves a vacuum. For skeptics of the natural explanation, the absence of rigorous, targeted study is itself suspicious. They argue that science should be eager to investigate such a prominent anomaly, and that the dismissal of the spheres as mere concretions is a form of intellectual laziness, a way to avoid confronting a puzzle that could upend conventional history. This standoff creates a frustrating impasse. Without a concerted scientific effort to analyze every facet of these objects under the most advanced instruments, the debate is destined to remain a war of interpretations, where the same physical evidence can be seen as either the signature of a natural process or the eroded fingerprint of a lost intelligence. The true nature of the Klerksdorp spheres remains locked inside them, waiting for a key that modern science has yet to fully apply. Perhaps our own minds are the final piece of this puzzle. We are hardwired for pattern recognition, a trait that helped our ancestors spot a predator hiding in the grass or identify edible fruit among the leaves. This deeply ingrained instinct has a fascinating and sometimes misleading side effect known as pareidolia. This is the psychological phenomenon where we perceive a meaningful image, like a face or a familiar object, within a random or ambiguous pattern. We see the man in the moon, a dragon in the clouds, or the Virgin Mary on a piece of toast. Our brains are not just seeing shapes. They are actively trying to assemble those shapes into something we already know, something that makes sense within our existing library of experiences. When we hold a Klerksdorp sphere, feeling its surprising weight and tracing the unnervingly straight grooves with our fingers, this same cognitive machinery kicks into high gear. The perfection of the sphere, the symmetry of the lines, the hard, polished surface, all of these qualities scream one thing to our modern brains: manufacture. We live in a world of machine-tooled precision, where round ball bearings and machine components are everyday objects. So when we encounter a natural object that shares those same qualities of symmetry and balance, our immediate, almost reflexive conclusion is that it must have been made. Our perception is filtered through a lifetime of experience with human technology, making it incredibly difficult to see the object for what it might simply be: a beautiful and complex fluke of geology. The sphere feels intentional because our minds are built to find intention, to see the hand of a maker even when the only sculptor is the slow, patient, and chaotic force of nature. This is not a failure of logic, but a feature of our own cognition. We are storytelling creatures, and a story about a lost craftsman is immediately more satisfying to our neural pathways than a story about mineral precipitation and metamorphic pressure. The grooves look designed because design is a concept we understand intimately. The idea that such precision could emerge from millions of years of random geological events feels counterintuitive, almost alien to the way we think. So we are left grappling with a profound question. Are we looking at evidence of an ancient intelligence, or are we simply witnessing the incredible power of our own minds to impose order on the chaos of the natural world, to see a signal in the noise because we are desperate for one? The mystery of the Klerksdorp spheres, then, may reside as much within the architecture of our own brains as it does within the 2.8 billion-year-old stone. The leap from geological curiosity to internet icon was powered by a media ecosystem hungry for ancient mysteries. Television documentaries, particularly those exploring ancient astronaut theories and forbidden archaeology, presented the Klerksdorp spheres not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a case already closed. With dramatic music and compelling narration, these shows framed the spheres with absolute certainty. Their perfect shape was labeled an impossible feat of nature. Their grooves were described unequivocally as machine-tooled. Their impossible age was presented not as a point of scientific fact, but as a smoking gun that proved conventional historians were wrong. This kind of storytelling is incredibly effective. It takes a complex, nuanced scientific discussion and transforms it into a thrilling cosmic detective story, where every groove is a clue left by starfaring visitors or a lost supercivilization. The appeal is primal. A narrative about ancient aliens is instantly more gripping and emotionally satisfying than a slow, patient explanation about mineral concretion and metamorphic crystallization. This sensational approach, however, comes with a significant cost. To build its captivating story, it must consistently ignore or actively dismiss the more complex, evidence-based geological explanations. The intricate processes that form concretions under immense heat and pressure are simplified away as inadequate or impossible. This creates a powerful false dichotomy for the viewer, forcing a choice between a dazzling, exciting explanation and a supposedly closed-minded scientific establishment unwilling to accept the truth. Online forums and social media platforms then amplify this effect 1,000-fold, creating vast echo chambers where the debunked NASA myth and other fabrications are repeated as undeniable fact. In these digital spaces, the spheres become dogma. Anyone questioning the ancient alien hypothesis is quickly framed as a debunker, a skeptic, or part of a deliberate cover-up to hide humanity's true history. The real victim in this entire process is the genuine, fascinating mystery at the core of these objects. The Klerksdorp Spheres are intriguing precisely because they sit in that challenging gray area, at the very boundary of what we can easily explain. They present a legitimate challenge that should push geologists to refine their models and deepen their understanding of rock formation under extreme conditions. Yet, by painting them with the broad, sensational brush of ancient astronauts, popular media ironically robs them of their true intrigue. It replaces a deep, complex question about the strange and beautiful workings of our own planet with a simple, pre-packaged fantasy. The spheres become mere props in a predetermined storyline, their actual physical properties and geological context rendered almost irrelevant. We are left with a fundamental choice about how we engage with such mysteries. Do we embrace the easy answer, the one that offers cinematic wonder but requires us to set aside established knowledge and embrace speculation as fact? Or do we have the courage to sit with the discomfort of not knowing for sure, to appreciate the object for the legitimate scientific puzzle it presents, a testament to the fact that our world is still capable of surprising us? The modern legacy of the Klerksdorp Spheres is a testament not to ancient engineers, but to our own powerful, enduring need for stories that make sense of a deeply confusing world. Within the quiet halls of the Klerksdorp Museum, the spheres rest inside a simple glass case. They are not presented with dramatic lighting or sensational captions, but with a quiet dignity that allows their own strange presence to speak. The display card nearby offers a concise, factual description, noting their composition as pyrophyllite and their origin from the local mines. It briefly mentions the two leading theories, acknowledging both the established geological explanation of concretion and the more speculative claims of an artificial origin. This balanced approach does not tell you what to think. It simply presents the facts and invites you to stand in judgment. The experience of seeing them is surprisingly intimate. They are smaller than you might expect, each one small enough to be cradled in your palm. Their color is a muted, earthy gray, and their surfaces catch the light in a way that reveals a subtle, almost waxy luster. The famous grooves are clearly visible on several specimens, 3 sharp lines etched with a precision that feels utterly out of place next to the rough, unshaped chunks of rock displayed alongside them. You find yourself leaning in, your eyes tracing the perfect curve of a sphere, then following the unnervingly straight path of a groove around its equator. It is one thing to hear about their symmetry in a story, and another entirely to witness it with your own eyes. In that quiet moment, the abstract debate collapses into a tangible, physical reality. The geological explanation, so logical in a textbook, suddenly feels distant. The idea of ancient craftsmen, once a fanciful thought, becomes a quiet, persistent whisper. The museum does not need to amplify the mystery. The objects themselves do all the work, sitting in their case as silent, unyielding enigmas from a time before time. This idea pushes beyond ancient astronauts into an even more profound possibility: the existence of a native terrestrial intelligence that flourished and vanished in the deep mists of time. Imagine a civilization not of humans, but of something entirely other, a species that rose to prominence on an Earth we would barely recognize. Their world was one of volcanic landscapes under a pale orange sky, a planet dominated by microbes, yet among them, a spark of consciousness somehow ignited. This is the most radical interpretation of the Klerksdorp Spheres, that they are not souvenirs from space, but the buried artifacts of a lost Earth, the sole surviving relics of a world that was old before the first multicellular life ever formed. The implications are staggering, suggesting that the story of intelligence on our planet is not a single, linear tale beginning with us, but a cyclical drama with acts we have completely missed. What if civilizations are not a one-time event, but a recurring phenomenon, with each rise inevitably followed by a fall so complete that all evidence is ground back into dust by the relentless gears of geological time? This is not just science fiction. Scientists have seriously contemplated a version of this very idea. It is known as the Silurian hypothesis, a thought experiment that asks a deceptively simple question. If an industrial civilization existed on Earth millions of years before our own, what traces would it leave behind, and could we even recognize them? The name is a playful nod to a classic Doctor Who monster, but the science behind it is sobering. Researchers who explored this concept concluded that the evidence would be incredibly faint. Our own civilization is laying down a layer of plastic, refined metals, and radioactive isotopes that will be visible in the rock for eons. But what if a civilization existed not a mere few thousand, but hundreds of millions of years ago? Plate tectonics would have long since recycled the continents they walked on. Their cities, built from stone and metal, would have been eroded to dust, their alloys oxidized back into ore. The fossil record itself is notoriously incomplete, preserving only a tiny fraction of life that ever existed. Finding a fossilized skeleton from such a being would be a miracle of improbability. So what would remain? The answer might be subtle chemical signatures and strangely shaped stones. The Silurian hypothesis suggests we should look for anomalies in the geochemical record, sudden spikes in certain isotopes or synthetic molecules that have no natural explanation. We should also look for objects that possess a geometry too complex, too precise, to be the product of known geology. This is where the Klerksdorp Spheres re-enter the conversation. If we apply this lens, their perfect roundness and parallel grooves are not proof of aliens, but potential markers of a terrestrial industrial age from a billion years before the dinosaurs. They could be the geological equivalent of a ceramic ball bearing, a component from a vast machine whose purpose we cannot fathom, the only part durable enough to survive the planet's endless recycling process. This theory forces us to confront the sheer, obliterating power of deep time. It suggests that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. A civilization that lasted for 100,000 years would be a brilliant flash in the pan, a geological instant. Its legacy would not be pyramids or skyscrapers, but perhaps only a handful of impossibly hard, spherical objects nestled in stone, silently waiting for a future intelligence to dig them up and wonder. Erich von Däniken's ancient astronaut theory offers a different kind of answer, one that reaches for the stars. In his seminal work, Chariots of the Gods, von Däniken proposed that our planet was visited by extraterrestrial beings in the distant past, and that these visitors were misinterpreted as gods by primitive humans. Their advanced technology, he argued, inspired the myths, religions, and even the monumental architecture of ancient civilizations. Within this provocative framework, the Klerksdorp Spheres find a new and dramatic role. They are no longer potential relics of a lost Earth culture, but something even more staggering, physical evidence left behind by these star-faring engineers. Imagine these spheres not as ritual objects, but as functional components. Their perfect balance and those precise equatorial grooves could indicate they were meant to rotate at high speeds, perhaps as gyroscopes for navigation systems in alien vehicles, or as bearings for powerful machinery that operated in harsh, otherworldly environments. Their incredible hardness and durability would be a necessity for such technology, engineered to withstand forces or conditions far beyond our current understanding. The fact that they are found in rock billions of years old only deepens this narrative, suggesting that Earth may have been a way station or an outpost for these visitors in an era so remote that all other traces of their presence have long since vanished. Perhaps the spheres were not even tools in a conventional sense. Could they have been data storage devices, their internal crystalline structure imprinted with vast libraries of information, waiting for a future species to discover the key to reading them? Or were they symbolic artifacts, left behind as markers or gifts, their spherical form representing a homeworld or a unified galactic community? The three grooves might then signify a fundamental cosmic constant or a navigational coordinate, a message in a geometric language we have yet to decipher. This theory elegantly, if speculatively, solves the timeline problem. It does not require a native civilization to have arisen amidst the microbes of the Precambrian. Instead, it posits that intelligence came from elsewhere, planting these enigmatic objects like seeds in the primordial rock. For those who find the geological explanations insufficient and the idea of a pre-human Earth civilization too fantastic, the ancient astronaut hypothesis provides a compelling third path. It transforms the spheres from a terrestrial mystery into an interstellar one, suggesting that the true story of the Klerksdorp Spheres is not written in the history of our world alone, but in the silent, vast chronicle of the cosmos itself. Yet for every claim of a lost civilization, geology offers a quiet, methodical counter-argument. The scientific consensus remains firmly rooted in the natural world, viewing these spheres not as artifacts, but as exquisite examples of a well-understood process. The principle of Occam's razor is central here, a logical tool that suggests when faced with multiple explanations, the one requiring the fewest assumptions is most likely to be true. In this case, the simplest path is not ancient astronauts or a forgotten industrial age, but the slow, blind, and powerful forces of our own planet. The evidence for concretion is not merely a guess. It is a model supported by countless other examples found across the globe. Geologists point to the Moeraki boulders in New Zealand or the Cannonball concretions in North America, all formed by the same essential mechanism of mineral precipitation. The Klerksdorp Spheres are unique in their specific material and their extreme age, but they are not unique in their fundamental nature. They fit a recognizable pattern. The legendary hardness is also demystified by this lens. Pyrophyllite is indeed a soft mineral, but when subjected to the immense heat and pressure of regional metamorphism, its entire structure changes. It recrystallizes into a much tougher, denser form, a transformation as predictable as soft clay being fired into hard ceramic in a kiln. The spheres are not miraculously hard, they have been naturally forged. As for the grooves, the most tantalizing feature, skeptics argue we are misreading the evidence. Under a geologist's eye, those parallel lines are not machined cuts, but the raised ridges of incipient conchoidal fractures. They are the lines along which the sphere would have broken apart had it not been held fast by the surrounding rock, a natural consequence of internal crystalline structure responding to immense, uniform stress. The reason the scientific community remains largely unconvinced by artificial origin claims is not due to closed-mindedness, but because the natural explanation is robust, consistent, and does not require rewriting the entire history of life on Earth. There is no need to invoke a civilization for which there is no other evidence, no fossil record, no cultural debris, only these small, hard stones. The burden of proof rests on those making the extraordinary claim, and so far, a handful of puzzling spheres, however intriguing, simply is not enough to overturn mountains of geological data. The true wonder, then, may not be that these objects were made by someone, but that our planet is capable of creating such perfect forms all on its own. Perhaps we cling to these ancient spheres because they offer something our modern, mapped-out world often lacks, a genuine encounter with the inexplicable. The human mind is not designed to live solely in the light of the known. It craves the shadows at the edge of the fire, the whisper of something beyond the data. The Klerksdorp Spheres are a perfect vessel for this deep-seated need for wonder. They are a physical touchstone for our imagination, a handful of stone that allows us to ask, what if? In a time when so much of our reality feels quantified, categorized, and explained away, these objects stand as stubborn monuments to the idea that there are still stories hidden in the bedrock of our world, waiting to be read. They remind us that mystery is not a failure of science, but its fuel, the very thing that propels us to dig deeper, to look closer, and to question everything we think we understand. This is not merely about solving a puzzle. It is about the value of the puzzle itself, the state of awe and curiosity it inspires. That feeling, the quickening of the pulse when faced with the truly unknown, is a fundamental part of the human experience. We are drawn to these enigmas because they re-enchant the world, revealing layers of possibility we had forgotten were there. They also speak to a healthy, inherent skepticism towards any narrative that claims to be complete. The official explanation, no matter how logical, can sometimes feel like a cage. The idea that a handful of scientists have all the answers and that the history books are finished can be deeply unsatisfying to our spirit of exploration. The spheres represent a crack in that cage, a place where the official story stutters and alternative visions can flourish. They empower us to become detectives of our own past, to look at the evidence with our own eyes and decide for ourselves. This is why the cycle of investigation and speculation is perpetual. Each generation comes to these objects with new tools and new perspectives, hoping to be the one to crack the code. Some will always see the elegant hand of geology, while others will see the fingerprint of a forgotten maker. But both are engaged in the same essential human act, the search for meaning in a universe that is far stranger and more wonderful than we can often admit. The enduring power of the Klerksdorp Spheres lies not in what they are, but in what they allow us to be, explorers once more on a planet that still holds its deepest secrets close. So we stand at the crossroads of two compelling realities. On one hand, geology presents a powerful and elegant explanation, revealing how the slow, patient forces of concretion and metamorphism can forge near-perfect spheres from stone, their enigmatic grooves born from the crystal's own internal geometry under immense planetary stress. This is a story of an Earth that is itself a master craftsman, capable of creating breathtaking forms through nothing more than uniform pressure and mineral-rich water over billions of years. It is a narrative that requires no lost civilizations or cosmic visitors, fitting comfortably within the established laws of nature. Yet on the other hand, we cannot simply dismiss the evidence that feels so out of place. The unnerving precision of the equatorial grooves, the flawless symmetry of the spheres, and their legendary hardness continue to whisper of something more. These are the anomalies that refuse to be fully silenced by Occam's razor, the details that spark the irresistible question, what if? They are the kind of details that have fueled every great discovery in human history, the stubborn pieces that do not fit the existing puzzle. The Klerksdorp Spheres, therefore, do not offer us a simple answer. Instead, they present us with a choice, and more importantly, with a profound gift, the gift of a genuine mystery. They are a humbling reminder that our current knowledge, for all its power, still has its limits. There are still stories written in stone that we have not yet learned how to read. This is not a failure of science, but its very heart, an open invitation to keep questioning, to keep exploring, and to never stop wondering about the deep and hidden history of our world. The conversation does not end here, it begins with you. What do you believe these ancient objects truly are? Share your own theories and questions in the comments below, and if you are ready for more journeys into the unknown, subscribe to continue exploring the greatest mysteries of our time.